In alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah amma ba'd. On behalf of my Muslim family, I'd like to welcome you to another of our live Q&A sessions with a scholar or a counselor. And today we are having this session for the first time in the month of Ramadan. So we pray that Allah Azza wa Jal accepts our fasting, accepts our ibadat, and all our good deeds. Ameen. So it's my very good pleasure to have with us Sheikh Shakur back again for these sessions. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. How are you?
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Very well, mashallah. Jazakallah khair.
Good. Alhamdulillah. We're starting to get comments again as well from our members. So once again, if you are a member of the My Muslim Family platform, you can put any questions on the comment section. I'm watching out for them. And inshallah, I'll pick out any specific questions related to family, relationships, parenting, not general questions. So inshallah, feel free to make use of this important time. If there's any further questions that you do have. We had a comment on the comment section. Someone has a question, a major question. Just you can ask the question on the actual chat itself, and then I'll put it to Sheikh. We have half an hour left. So Sheikh, the next question is actually a very short question. It's any tips on setting up a weekly family halaqah?
Okay. In terms of weekly family halaqah, you just have to start doing it. You know, that's the biggest obstacle. Start doing it, and then you can improve it later. You know, sometimes we get into this mode of thinking where it has to have this and it has to have the other, and it has to be done by this person, and this many people have to be around. We complicate something that's meant to be very simple. You know, in the masjid, for example, after the salawat, on occasions, someone picks up a book and others gather around and they read, whether it's Riyadh al-Salihin or a different book. They just read from the book and they don't add anything, just read. Okay, that's how some of these halaqas start. That's it. You just pick up a book and you're reading it together. And if you want to improve it, okay, you can start talking about what you've just read to make sure everyone understood what was being read. To start as something very basic like that. Then it could move up to something a bit more advanced. Someone actually prepares, reads through the verses that you're going to read or the ahadith that you're going to read, and prepares by reading around all the tafsir on that verse or those verses, or the different commentaries on those hadith, if they're qualified to do so or able to do so, and gathers that or listens to a talk on those things and relates what they heard. And then they have a conversation about that. But the main thing is to start something. Once you start something, then you can build upon it. Unless you start, it's never going to happen. And the improvements will never occur. Don't try to complicate things. Keep it very simple. Either a book that is an explanation of a particular issue, and go through a series of books like that, reading them together, reading the translation of the Quran, reading Riyadh al-Salihin, the hadith of Riyadh al-Salihin. Something very simple like that. Start off. Then as you grow, and as it's an established habit of the family, then you can start to improve it and then look elsewhere. So I would say first just start off reading a part of the translation of the Quran and a few ahadith of Riyadh al-Salihin. Just that, nothing else. And then talk about what you've read and leave it at that, and have a regular slot where you do it every week. And don't make it too long, maybe 20 minutes, half an hour maximum, something like that. And then see how it develops. Don't try to think of something glorified and something advanced at this time. Once you've got it established and it's been going for a good 6 months, something like that, then look at where you want to take it, etc. Once everyone is committed to that family circle. And Allah knows best.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. So the next question we have is slightly longer, so just bear with me. The question is thus: My husband and I live in two separate countries and we have four children. Our youngest son is with me only. My husband is a calm person. However, at times he goes out of character. This is stressing me out and making me lose my mind. He never compliments me or calls me honey, etc. When I delivered a baby and was ill, he prayed Quran on me but didn't show sympathy. If we argue, another side of him comes to light and he isn't willing to compromise. I am not perfect, but these issues are affecting my physical and mental health. A few days ago, he called me, and after a few minutes, he wanted to end the call. I said, Honey, can we talk a few more minutes? And he said, Are you counting the time we talk? This destroyed me. I said to him, Please call my family and free me because Allah is my witness. I did my best to be strong, but you're taking my energy and health down, and I have a small baby. However, at the same time, I fear I will be destined for Jahannam because the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that if a woman asks divorce her husband with no reason, she will not get the fragrance of Jannah. I have gone through a lot of pain and stuck through it for the sake of the children. He has not written or announced any talaq clearly, but he sent a voice note saying, Since you requested children to be that is between us, that is it, those children are between us. May Allah grant you your dreams. Does that mean I am divorced? P.S. We don't talk anymore, just text to ask about each other. I've asked him that he forgive each other and move on because it is Sha'ban and we should remove grudges before Ramadan. So, sorry, there was slight typos in the original message here, so I fumbled a bit,
لا
but
بأس.
yeah.
Okay, so in this case, the sister seems to be feeling yani, the loneliness of being yani, without a husband. In reality, her husband is not actually around at all. They seem to have yani, gone on different tracks. He's in another country, she's in another country. Now, sister, what you said about you fear Jahannam for yani, asking for divorce without a reason. What you've mentioned here is clearly a reason. You're saying that there's no emotional connection between you and your husband. You're not getting the support that you require. And yani, I don't know the reality of your situation, so I can't say definitively this is the case. But if the case is that he never speaks to you, he's hardly ever in the country, as you said. Okay, so he's not there. That emotional support, the presence of a husband, all of that is not there. And then children are yours alone, and you're looking after them, and he's not around. That means the support of a husband is not actually real in your life. So therefore, he's not maintaining you in the way that a husband needs to, at least visiting you often and speaking to you often, etc. Because this is yani, the norm. When Allah said, وَعَاشِرُهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ and live with them in goodness, in a good way, it means all of these customary things of being together, speaking, being there for one another, these things should be there. So, yani, you shouldn't think that you're sinful for feeling sad in this relationship, and that you've come to the point that you're so detached, you're not even having conversations anymore, you're texting. That is not a marriage or normal communication in a marriage. So it's normal for you to feel like this is not a marriage anymore. And if it doesn't feel like a marriage anymore, it's normal for a human being to start thinking, okay, so why am I still in this marriage? Because I have certain needs and they're not being met. Okay, so these are all normal things. So the hadith that you mentioned does not apply in your situation. So, what I would suggest, and this is the way I see you should proceed. Number one, have that conversation with your husband. Look, this is not a real marriage anymore. So, we need to fix things. Either we go to some counseling and we discuss how we're going to move forward if we're going to stay together. And if you're not willing to do that, then you know what? This is not a marriage anymore. So maybe we need to take a different step. If we're not going to work on fixing it, then maybe we need to work on bringing it to an end and moving on with our lives. And that was indicated in one of the statements you said as well. Let's forgive, forget, and move on with our lives. Yani, moving on with your lives means either you work together in a marriage properly, or call it a day and you move on separately. So these are not simple decisions. You shouldn't rush to make these decisions. And in any of these decisions, there will be a process. The counseling side, you have to go to counseling and you have to go to various different sessions, etc., and work through things. If that's not going to happen, even to get out of a marriage, then either he divorces you, or you go to for example, Islamic council, and you ask them um, in your application for khul'a that this is why I want to bring the marriage to an end. And then there's a process where you have to both come to joint meetings and discuss the situation. The facts have to be ascertained, reconciliation tried. If all of that fails, then later on in the process, the marriage may come to an end. But all of that needs to be explored, and it needs to be explored so that you have that good mental state, and it improves your well-being. Because right now it sounds like a very bleak situation that you found yourself in, and if you don't see hope that there can be change in the situation, then it's going to send you further into this kind of a bleak way of thinking. Whereas a Muslim shouldn't think like that. Okay, remember that marriage is only part of your life. Okay, life is much bigger than just your marriage. You are a slave of Allah. You have children that you need to be there for. You have all the other facets of your life that you still need to get on with. Find those things that bring you pleasure, and use your time that you have spare in those types of things which lift you up, rather than thinking about the loneliness that you have from this absent husband. So try to preoccupy yourself, and don't start thinking about, the perfect ideal where the husband is always there and always nice to you, etc. Because that's going to send you into further a depressive kind of way of thinking. Rather, busy yourself with other friendships, other good relationships with sisters and your deen and your children, etc. Busy yourself with other things so that you take away some of the loneliness while you're going through this process, to see, is there a future in this marriage, or is it something that is going to be brought to an end? And Allah knows best. May Allah make it easy for you, sister, and all those in a similar situation.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. So we have one more question for today. And the question is this: my husband wants to marry a second wife, and he agreed when he married me that he wouldn't do it. I feel that he doesn't value me, and death would be easier for me than to be a co-wife due to the cultural norms in our region. He said he only wants to take a second wife to be happier and more complete.
Does the sister mention what region or ethnicity that she is?
I think it's Asia. I'm not 100% sure though.
Okay. Now, the husband in Islam is allowed to take a second wife. Now, if he agreed in the contract itself, whether in writing or at the time of the contract, that he was not going to marry a second wife, then he has to stick to that. Now, in this kind of scenario, you definitely need to take it to an Islamic council where both of you sit down and go through this issue carefully to see what the reality is in terms of, did he agree as a condition of the marriage that he wouldn't marry a second wife? So let's say you were sitting in front of an adjudicator or an Islamic judge, and they went through the issue and found that, yes, this was a condition of the marriage. And he agreed to this condition of the marriage. And now he wants to break that condition that he agreed to. What happens next is that you would have the right to dissolve the marriage and bring your marriage to an end if that had been established. So you need to decide if that is what you really want, for this marriage to be brought to an end, if he takes a second wife. Now, if, however, it wasn't a condition of the marriage and he didn't accept that condition during the nikah, and it's not written down and it's not established, that he agreed to that condition, then it would be a very different scenario. Now, no woman is going to like to be a second wife. It's not in the fitrah for a woman to like to be a second wife. Yet at the same time, Allah has allowed this. And it is not a reason why, Islamically, a wife should ask for a divorce and to end her marriage. It's not a legitimate reason in that sense. So from an Islamic point of view, Allah gave him a right, and there is a maslahah, there is a greater benefit for the ummah in men having multiple wives in the nikah sense. Okay, so sisters obviously will be averse to this idea of their husband having another wife. Yet our lives are not meant to be about our wants, our desires taking precedence over everything else. And many sisters, unfortunately, I know of so many countless examples where a sister has not been married and she's now in her 40s. Okay, she's now in her 40s, but still she's not willing to be a second wife and deprive herself of marriage and having that relationship that every human being needs, because she's not willing to be a second wife. She would rather be alone than be a second wife. Now, this Islamically is wrong. Sisters, when you get to the age of 60, 70 years old, and you have no one in your life, and you have no children, and you're alone, it's not a situation that Allah wants you to be in, because the greatest joy for human beings in this dunya, other than our relationship with Allah, is our relationship with our families. Islam, and actually every single religion that Allah sent down, and even the non-religious societies, and prior to about 60, 70 years, they understood this. Human beings understood this. The greatest things in your life are your relationship with your creator, and then your relationship with your relations, your family. Now, don't deprive yourself of these things. And at the same time, going back to the questioner, sister, if you have children, and it wasn't mentioned that you have children, breaking up your marriage if your husband takes a second wife means causing detriment to your children, because we know broken homes create trauma for children, which cause lots of problems in society. Those children grow up with lots of pain and baggage that's not processed and dealt with. And then their personality suffer, their performance as human beings, academically, professionally, in their relationships, all of that suffers. So, what I would say to my sisters who are in such a predicament, yes, it's not going to be very nice for you. Yes, there are problems with it. Yes, it's going to hurt. Yes, all of these things are real. Emotionally, it's difficult. Yet, if you persevere, you do what is upon you, and you pray to Allah to overcome this hurdle, in that is a greater benefit for you, your children, the society around you, and the ummah at large. If it wasn't the case, Allah wouldn't have legislated such, because Allah's legislation is perfect. Anything that He has ordained is for a wisdom. So, therefore, live with Allah's wisdom and accept it and submit to it, and you will find every type of good. But when we don't submit to the wisdom of Allah, to His guidance, His legislation, then we actually create more problems for not only ourselves, but for our children, our families, our communities, and the ummah at large. May Allah give us tawfiq and strength to submit to His legislation and get through these difficult choices that we have to make in our lives.
Okay, Sheikh, Jazakallah khair. We've had a question just in
Yeah.
the comment section. So I'll just ask that one. It says, husband and wife are living separately due to husband committing adultery. What are the financial rights if the wife lives alone with her child? The question is also on the screen.
Okay.
It carries
SubhanAllah.
on though.
This, yeah.
There's
Is there
another
more
part.
in the question?
Yeah, and the person can actually type anything else. So he says, husband says he will only pay off if she returns to his house with in-laws. Otherwise, will only pay for child's education needs and half for groceries. Sorry to cut you off there, Sheikh.
Okay. Now, right. Adultery is a humongous crime. And the legislation is there to deal with it. And we don't live in an Islamic society. So those repercussions are not real for us. Okay. So when you live in a hypersexualized society like the West and the UK, etc., these things unfortunately do happen, and happen more so than in other places. It's no excuse, and steps need to be taken. Now, the wife here, they've separated, they've split up. The wife needs to decide, and there's no rush to make that decision because they're separated at the moment. But in the long term, is this a marriage that can be salvaged? Is this a slip that can be rectified and the marriage continues, or is this the beginning of the end of the marriage? So that's the main kind of thing that the sister firstly needs to think about. Then after that, the rest of the questions follow. Now, what does he have to provide for her? What does he not have to provide for her is dependent on the marital situation. So if they are still married, she should be staying in the marital home, and therefore he would have to provide for her fully in terms of providing for her as a wife and providing for the children because they're his children. Now, if they are still married and she's left the marital home without his permission, then she forfeits the maintenance that is due to her as a wife. The man still has to provide for his children, but then that's going to be a contentious issue on how much and what he's going to provide for, etc. So if they can't resolve it between themselves and come to an agreement, then they would have to come to an arbitrator or an Islamic judge to facilitate that arbitration, or actually make a judgment on how much he has to provide for the children taking into account where they live, and the ages of the children, and how much money that actually and it should be allocated to them because of their ages and the needs that they have at that particular age. So if they can do this between themselves, well and fine. But overall, the husband still has to provide. But how much he provides depends on the income that is being received by by the mother for the children, how much income is being brought in by the husband. So all of these factors have to be taken into account. If they agree something, great. No one else has to interfere or get involved. If the wife is not happy with an agreement that they come to, then if he's not willing to budge, then the only route she has after that is either the Islamic route, if they both agree to come to an Islamic council, etc. And if they don't agree that, then the only other route she would have is the legal system, the maintenance people. So these are the options that she has. If they can do it amicably, obviously that is the best result for all parties, and especially the children. Because the last thing the children need to hear about or see is the fighting of their parents. In this kind of situation, sister, as well, even though the husband has done wrong, remember he's still the children's father. Never discuss those wrongs with the children. Never speak about his wrongs with the children, because that's their father. They need to be able to look up to their father and have a good opinion of their father. So both sides should never paint a bleak picture or a bad picture about the parent or the other parent, because that's going to cause damage to the emotional and psychological development of the children. It is not right Islamically either, and it would be considered at the very least as backbiting, which is haram, a major sin, which Allah talks about in the Quran, وَيْلٌ لِكُلِّ هُمَزَةٍ لُمَزَةٍ, in Surah Al-Humazah that we all know, and very, 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 very much shunned by the Prophet ﷺ, and talked about this kind of person never entering paradise. So something never to be done because of all of the consequences, both in this world and the hereafter. So the route, in summary, for you, sister, make a decision, and you don't have to rush to the decision. Take counsel from people who have your best interests at heart. Is the marriage, is it in a state where it can never be rectified and it needs to be brought to an end? Or is it something that was a major mistake that he made and he's apologizing for, and going to take steps to rectify, and there's a possibility of reconciliation? So that's the main thing. Once that has been done, then you know what to do in moving forward. There should be some kind of counseling. There should also be, for both of you, time to connect once again and repair the damage that's been done. And then also steps that he would have to take to make sure that he doesn't fall into such a sin in the future. If, however, the choice is that the marriage has been damaged irreparably and needs to be brought to an end, then you need to have that discussion and then amicably bring it to an end, whether between yourselves or through an Islamic council, and do it in a way that you both know where you stand and have equal access and amicable access to your children, and move forward in an amicable way, even if you're just co-parenting and no longer married. Because at the end of the day, because of a parent's mistakes, the children should not suffer, and neither parent should use the children against the other parent. May Allah make it easy. May Allah give you that which is best for you all, and especially your children, who are the party that suffers the most from these things, yet has no blame. May Allah protect all of our children.
I mean, Jazakallah khair, Sheikh, for taking all those questions. I think that takes us to the end of all the questions for today. Jazakallah khair. You've also produced a series on My Muslim Family, which I believe you shot last week. So,
Indeed.
do you want to give any kind of summary or introduction to what the session will be about? It'll be launched
I
pretty
think
soon.
the videos that we did, the series that we did, were frequently asked questions about Ramadan. So we dealt with it from both the Islamic perspective and also by looking at the family and trying to look at how to maximize your Ramadan as a family, and clarifying some of those misconceptions people have on what deeds to prioritize over other deeds. So there was a bit in there about specific actions for sisters as well, and those that were general for all Muslims, and those were specific for fathers in the family. So hopefully, it's beneficial. May Allah make it beneficial for everyone, and accept it from the whole team.
I mean, Jazakallah, very much looking forward to it. Inshallah, it should be up and running very soon. So once again, Jazakallah khair, Sheikh, for your time today, and
Wayak.
Jazakallah khair to all our viewers as well for tuning in and asking their questions. So that brings us to the end of our live Q&A session. We will be back at the new time for Ramadan, which is on Sunday at 2 p.m. So from all of us from the My Muslim Family team, I'd like to say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.